It didn't turn out right.
I'm just saying that's what somebody asked. Okay.
I wish someone would.
Yeah.
Everyone, please come to order. This is the regular board meeting for the Hidden Valley Lake Board of Directors for Thursday, January 23rd. If you all please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Robin, can you call the roll? Present.
Diane Wiley Bowers.
Here.
Susan Story.
Present.
Steve Swanson.
Here.
Edith Lynn.
Here.
Ted Long.
Here.
Melody Colaquan.
Here.
Present.
Okay, for our first item, it's member comments. Your board of directors encourages comments on the policies, programs, and services of our association. However, personal criticisms and personal attacks are not allowed. Please observe proper decorum. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand, and when called on, you can come to the podium, and each member is allowed 3 minutes. So who would like to speak? Familiar face, Mr. Wooster.
Jack Worcester, 11042. This is my last visit. I'll be leaving February 4th for Idaho. And in that context, I'd like to leave one message. What's transpiring here and has been transpiring for 15 years or so is synonymous with what's going on in Washington. Hillary Clinton and his deplorables is synonymous with factions here who are categorized as incorrigible and noisy. And until the factions come together, we'll have the same result here in Hidden Valley. I won't be here, but we'll have the same result here in Hidden Valley as you have in Washington right now. So it is absolutely imperative that there be activity that brings the factions together to come up with important things like a comprehensive, long-range strategic plan for replacing, rejuvenating, et cetera, the amenities for, let's say, a 20-year plan. You have financial information that goes that long. Until you get that kind of a plan, because of the way boards turn over, there's going to be no consistency in terms of what happens as it relates to making this place what it can be again. And until we have all the members operating on the same premise, with the same goals, we will not be successful. I have to admit, I was a failure. I was unsuccessful in bringing the community together, and most people know the reasons for that. So I apologize to you all for not having been successful in that context. But I will reiterate, if this and any other board that comes along does not come up with a plan that is integral to the total operation and which all the members understand what's going to transpire and when, we will not be successful. Unfortunately, I won't be here to see it. I'm leaving February 4th. It's been a pleasure to have known and worked with many of you. And I hope that some of these words will allow all of us to come together and will inspire the kind of activity that is necessary for this place to be successful for all the members. So, in that context, one more time, I believe you will never be successful until you come up with that comprehensive 20 to 25-year plan for amenity rejuvenation. This same kind of activity that's now going on in terms of recalls here and impeachments in Washington, which are essentially the same thing, we won't be successful and you won't be successful. So I implore you, in my final 14 seconds, to please give that every consideration and come up with something that all successive boards can work with and use. It doesn't mean it can't be changed. It simply means we have a plan, and it's a plan that is workable, and it's based upon empirical data. There's no personality in it at all. And with that, in that context and with that final statement, thank you again. I shall not see you again, but Godspeed and good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I'm sure all the directors, we wish you the best, and thank you for our service, and the best to you in Idaho. Thank you. Have a
Good
warm
luck,
jacket,
Jack.
I hope.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Who would like to follow that one? You ready? No? Going once, twice? Okay, we'll move ahead with our agenda then. The first is the approval of the agenda. I have 2 items to note tonight. There are 2 items on the agenda that we're not quite ready for one reason or another. Well, the one is the formation of the Building Oversight and Advisory Committee. We were hoping to have some additional candidates to interview and appoint tonight, but I don't believe that we have any additional ones. Is that correct, Robin? So that matter of old business, we have one already appointed. Yeah, you're already official. So we're trying to find one more to join the committee. And then the other item under new business, the bar for fence design. There'd been a little miscommunication back and forth between the committee and the liaison and myself, so we have a few more things that we need to polish up, but at the next meeting we'll have a good document for the board to review with the new fence design guidelines for approval. So 2 things that we won't be talking about tonight, but otherwise we'll have the full agenda. Anybody have any other changes to the agenda? No? Okay, then if there's no complaint with that, we'll go ahead for reports. The first report is the President's report. And I do have a little PowerPoint tonight, but it's very brief. You might have seen in the agenda that we have a report from Charles Russ later, and he's got a nice PowerPoint, so I don't want to compete with him for the PowerPoint tonight. I just want to make a few announcements. 3 different announcements, give you an update on the recall election. I want to thank the committee members who fulfilled their previous terms ending December 31st. And announce the appointment of the Building Oversight and Advisory Committee. So the first, for the recall, the board has determined that sufficient petitions were properly formed and signed and were submitted on January 9th. So it looks like we will be having a recall election. Per the state law, the board has 20 days to announce the timeline for the election, and we plan to do that on January 29th via Clearline. So next Wednesday, we'll be announcing the timeline. We actually didn't have time earlier today to fully discuss it, so we're going to be staying later today and working that out, the timeline. In determining the timeline, we're consulting our attorneys, of course. We're also reviewing how recalls were conducted by past boards before we finalize the final election schedule. So we're looking, there was, in 2015, there was an election, and we're looking how the board handled it at that time to get guidance on how we should handle this one. And then the final thing, of course, the process is complicated this year because of the passage of Senate Bill 323, and it requires that all associations rewrite their election rules before holding any elections, and then once they do rewrite the election rules, no elections can be held for 90 days after their approval. So we're trying to figure out how all this fits into setting the timeline for the election. So stay tuned. Next Wednesday, we'll have our announcement to the members on the scheduling of the recall. I want to thank the committee members who fulfilled their term come December 31st. We said thank you to 11 committee members who completed their terms to the end. So the board wants to thank them. We're going to be preparing a thank you to each of them and a little gift certificate. It's been our tradition. And we had 11 members. So We often hear how it's hard finding people to serve on the committees. This shows that there are some hardworking, community-minded people out there. So these 11 people, we thank you for your service. And some of them have even signed up for additional service in the same committees, or some have tried other committees, so they're staying involved. And then the other is the new Building Oversight and Advisory Committee for the rebuilding of the community center and the Hartman Building. At the last meeting, we interviewed and appointed 6 members to serve on the committee. Today I'm announcing that Steve Swanson, I'm asking him to be the liaison to the committee. His architectural background should lend additional expertise to the committee and give him a good idea of what's being talked about, maybe at the committee. And so I'm going to ask Steve to work with Robin in contacting the new committee members and find a mutually acceptable date that they can set up their first meeting in February to begin their planning. And then there's our 6 new members. And we're still, as I mentioned earlier, we're still looking for 1 more, plus possibly a couple alternates to serve on the committee to really bring it up to speed. So that's it. That's my update for today. And we'll move on to Treasurer's report.
All right, the Finance Committee, while I'm speaking here, Kim, if you wanted to come up and Randy put up the summer report. The Finance Committee met today, as you all may be aware. We changed Finance Committee meetings to quarterly. First, on the approval of financials of November, we're able to do that, ratify the financials for November. We're waiting for auditors' numbers for the December and year-end financials, so more on those financials to follow. You'll note on when we go through, when Kim does a quick run-through of the summary sheet here, there's a couple of numbers that are rather large in red. One is food and beverage. We had kind of a fairly substantive discussion this morning in the in the Finance Committee meeting about the number in food and beverage, you know, and why it ended up looking like it did for the year. Is that different? Do we have different numbers here, Kim, than we did this morning? Huh? Oh, did you? We don't have. Okay, we don't have, you know, we don't have the December. Yeah, that's right. Okay, but at any rate, no matter, it's, you know, the concern is on some of these issues. You know, some of the food and beverage, you know, the Greenview Room and how it was doing was, I mean, you can see the numbers for food and beverage at that point, you know, what the deficit was running. Again, it's discussion about, this is an amenity, just like golf operations, just like the stable, just like the pool. It's an amenity that we pay for. There was a discussion about how to improve some of those numbers, but I think those numbers, you know, that discussion is going to be had with Randy on board now and taking a look at it. And we talked about this morning that it's the first time some of us, you know, I and as the treasurer running through some of these, you know, the audit issues and the budget and so forth for the first time, and Randy seeing, you know, some of these numbers, year-end numbers and so forth for the first time, and now has a chance to kind of take a look in 2020 on how to improve some of these numbers. So with that, those are kind of the discussions that we had with the at the Finance Committee meeting today. Kim, you want to run through any highlights, numbers?
I think you took my word. So everything that you spoke about, I would just be reiterating on November's. The bad debt number is the elephant in the room that we suffer with. We are $378,000 over budget on our bad debt number. So that's something that Randy and I are working on for 2020 as trying to work with the county and other collection agencies to get a handle on that and get us back into a place along with our auditor where it's a more tolerable number. Other than that, if you go down to fleet maintenance, you'll see that they are worse than budget. And that was just due to some repairs that had to get done on some of the vehicles in our fleet. If you look at the stables, it is worse than budget, and that is because we are 6 horses short on our stable rent. So if you have a horse, if you need a home, we have a home. Common areas is worse than budget by $31,289, and that is due to the staffing. We have a union contract that requires that we have a number of people. Those numbers of people used to take care of a community center that we don't have, so those dollars are spent elsewhere. The impact mainly is on the common areas. Food and beverage is worse than budget by $60,202. Steve spoke on that. And the GM is working with the food and beverage manager to work towards a better close in our better allocation in 2020. Golf course operations worse than budget by $87,115. That is expected. We knew that coming in. We knew that from the beginning of the budget season, once this budget was adopted, and so we are aware that that was going to miss its mark. Golf course maintenance did better than budget by $75,838. So the golf variance as a whole is off by $11,277. So if you go back up, and if I can show you some highlights, environmental control is better to budget by $136,298, and that was just working with their weed abatement contractor, working a better relationship now that we have a tree management company in here, by not having to take operating dollars out of the tree, or out of the operating account to pay for reserve items that should have always gone in there, but our tree maintenance, we never had a reserve line for it. So security, admin and patrol did better to budget by $81,000. So Russ and Tom run a pretty tight ship and watch their numbers pretty darn carefully. Other than that, general maintenance better than the budget by $72,442. Most of that is the reserve items that we have done this year. A lot of their work was performed on reserve items, of which we get capitalized out of that, out of the reserve account. So we did have $77,000 worth of contingency expenses, which was in your board packet, and it showed exactly where those expenses did go. So each line item. And then you have the generators as of November. We had more monies received than actually spent, and the board did allow for the $12,500 expense, which will be allocated in, you will see that in December's numbers. So better than budget as a whole in the association by $76,629. So is your bottom line. And also recovery of bad debt. We did do better than budget by $93,000. Also wanted to note that. Any questions?
Just, for people's benefit, in the audience, and Kim, correct me if I'm misstating this, but just to help you all read these statements a little bit easier, if you look at, right, you can drop this down just a little bit, annual budget, when you're seeing parentheses, folks, because there's a lot of consternation now about the increase in our assessments and so forth, but this is the cost. These are, this is our cost of our association. When you see this, these aren't money makers. There's the money makers right here, and Kim talks about bad debt. People aren't paying their assessments on time, aren't paying them whatever. It affects all of us because it has to pay for all these numbers that are in parentheses here. This is what I was talking about before, whether it's food and beverage, green view room, whether it's the golf course, whether it's the stables. It's all a cost to the organization. So in the future, because we'll see this on a regular basis, in the future, they kind of look and see where, what the annual budget was, and then, where we are in the actual per month and per month, so you can track it on a regular basis with the rest. So I hope that helps for people to kind of understand and look at those numbers and understand the cost, again, to keep the lights on and the doors open in HVL. The only other thing I have was audit is underway. It's going to be complete mid-February. The Finance Committee will review it, meet it, accept it or not, and then look for it at the board's meet, probably the last board meeting of March, I think is when the board will see it. So that's all I had for the report, unless anybody's got any
I have
questions.
a question for Kim. I know we're talking about November, but you mentioned that you're starting to look at December?
No, the board didn't get December.
Right, no, I didn't, but you're starting to look at numbers, you are.
Oh,
So are you comfortable making a prediction of where we're going to end the year yet, kind of the ballpark?
we will probably be at a loss. So a
Okay.
minimal loss, but we will probably be at a loss.
Like a tens of thousands loss?
No.
Okay, I don't want to ask you anymore. Okay, we'll wait for the next meeting, thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay, thank you for the treasurer's report. Next, secretary's report.
Okay, so this is a summary for the executive session, January the 9th, 2020. The meeting was called to order at 4:08 PM. Present were directors Brashears, Bowers, Lentz, Long, Story, and Swanson. Director Klein signed in via conference call. The executive session draft minutes for December 9, 2019 were approved. Under member issues, the board considered 7 member issues. Under formation of contract, prior to the open session, the board reviewed the 2020 contract with Timberline Shipping Services and the 2020 Stables Manager contract with Megan McGaffney. Under personnel issues, the board did discuss 2 legal issues. The meeting was adjourned at 6:01 PM, and the next meeting was this evening, January 23rd, 2020.
Okay, great, thank you, Sue. Next, staff report, GM report. And I guess you got a whole team presenting today.
Yeah, I got a whole team tonight. A couple things. I'll be briefer than I normally am, at least initially. Both Kim and Charles have a presentation tonight, and that's going to take a little bit of time. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I attended a luncheon last Wednesday, I believe it was. Moke Simon was a featured guest that was at the Senior Center down in Middletown. I also went to an event the day before yesterday, or was it yesterday? I don't know, their days all run together anymore. Mike Thompson, our congressman, was in Middletown, and I attended that event. Saw a few of you there. And I did bring up the moratorium to both of those individuals. I spoke a little bit more length with Moke, since the federal government has very little to do with state. And has, but I did at least make him raise his awareness of it a little bit. Moke is committed to helping us with that as well. Yet today we had a dam inundation, or actually it was a emergency action plan review with, some of you may have seen the Highway Patrol and Sheriff and a bunch of Caltrans and other vehicles out front here this morning, and that was what that was about. We will be bringing that presentation to the board probably within the next 2 months. It's a requirement of having a dam. You know, the lessons learned from the Oroville almost disaster, that the state's now much more interested in our dam. We pay $30,000 or $35,000 a year for the privilege of having a dam in our backyard, and that just went up $5,000 this past year. The board approved a letter to the State Water Board. I've made it available, copies of the letter available to those of you who have asked. Anybody who wants a copy, and the intent is to get it posted on the website if it's not already, and it is. Okay, I'm getting a nod from Jim, so it's on the website. And if you want a hard copy, I have 1 copy here that I can hand out or make copies if there's more people that want it. Just a couple of other things I wanted to point out. Some misinformation that's been on social media. Somebody quoted me as saying that I said that we were not at a greater fire risk, and what I said was our awareness is raised, but the actual risk is not any greater than it was. So I wanted to clarify that. Someone today posted that a loan is being proposed, or at least being discussed, may force us into receivership. I've heard that individual homes are going to be used as collateral. That's pure and utter bovine feces, okay? Understand that that's not true. Anything that you see that may be attributed to me, I encourage you to ask me about it. Anything about statistics about how the association is run, ask me about it. I will share it with you. Don't listen to people who said, somebody said, Randy said, whatever. Listen to me, come to me. I will talk to you about it. So with all that being said, I want to bring Kim to the microphone. She has a presentation about reserves. And I'll get it pulled up here while she's coming to the microphone. If I can find my cursor. There it is. Wrong one. Come on. There we go.
It's an Excel spreadsheet. I was asked to give a simple presentation of which I did at the board orientation, but just to go into a little bit more on the reserve fund as to what it is and how we expect to fund it and how we expect to use the funds in it. Your reserve fund is there for the repair, replacement, and maintaining of the association's common properties and common assets. So that's what it's there for. You have a funding plan, and you have access to your reserve study. It's on the website. It's available to you. Also, it came out, you received 5 pages in your disclosure that I'm sure everybody looked at, read, and knows, and by heart by now. So what I put on the board is just our funding plan. It shows what we did in 2019. It shows what we're expected to do in between 2020 and 2026. Again, this reserve study is a live document. As soon as it is created, it gets changed. There's a vehicle that needs to be replaced, or a dog park that needs to be something done, or a swimming pool that needs new lanes. It changes. It changes immediately, and it changes fluidly whenever a manager of a department walks into my office. It changes. So don't expect it to look exactly as it's projected to look next year or the following years thereafter. You can see by, in 2020, I'll take those numbers. 2020, we started with a $5,231,000 balance. We are expected to expend $2,619,000, and we have those projects in place, ready to go, ready to start getting worked on. That's what Matt Woodard does for you. He is your project manager, along with each one of the department heads if one of these expenditures are within their department. So it's also an IT item. If it's an IT, Wi-Fi, computer, or something of that sort, it's also his department also. So we work in conjunction with one another to make sure that these projects go according to the plan that the board has put to us. And if we deviate from that plan, it's with board approval. So, and if Randy will scroll down a little bit, the $2 million number, $2,615,000, $19,000 number is an accumulation of these 75 projects. These 75 projects are the projects that are expected to be done this year. So they range from mounting radios in vehicles to swimming pool lanes to Wi-Fi items to all the lake sediment projects to the board, the design fees on the Hartman project, video cameras galore. And so if you'll scroll up a little bit, you can see just a little bit more. There's computers, there's an array of things that staff has, and the reserve study analysis has stated that it is time for these things to be repaired, replaced, or maintained in a more fluid manner than just on a daily, weekly, annual basis. So these costs are associated with all the different items that are expected to be repaired or replaced this year. So if you go back up to the top, the contribution, the $2.4 million number is the contribution that will go in to the association reserve account for 2020. That happens throughout the year. Transfers come out at the rate of the $2.4 million. It is $61.66 per lot per month is what your assessment goes to. So out of your assessment, $61.66 goes to the reserve study. And on an annual basis, that's $739.93 on an annual basis. There's an interest factor in there of 2.5%. If you know where you're getting 2.5%, I'd really love to know that. But the interest rate is a 2.5% interest rate is what our reserve study, and that is based on a 30-year span. If you look at history for a 30-year span, the reserve analysis believe that 2.5% is the average of what you'll make on funds. So the 2.5% interest is where that comes from. So if you look at the end of 2020, we will have $5,160,930 if everything goes as it did when he pushed print on this report. So we know that, again, it's fluid, it changes. You know, we find dry rot somewhere we didn't know there was dry rot. We've got to fix it. If you want us to fix it, you want us to maintain these buildings and your assets in a better manner. So that's where that expenditure rate, our expenditure dollars may go up. 2021 is 4.456 million. And if you're ready to scroll down to the bottom, it's just a general lump sum of what that number is. The 3.3 million for the beginning of the Hartman building, if that's where the board ends up going. Asphalt, trees, security, vehicles, office equipment, mailbox clusters, stairs on the big beach, and different $220,000 for miscellaneous amenity items. We just didn't break it down to the 75 items. So that's where the 4.456 million number comes for 2021 reserve dollars. So Randy, if you don't mind going back up.
I'm going to charge you.
I know. So that's where your numbers are. That's where they come from. So you understand just a little bit more of what your funding plan is. You will see in 2021, you see in 2022, it goes according to what we had in place when he pushed print. Another $5.4 million will be expended, and your reserve ending balance will end up at $804,000. It is what it is. You know, in California, you're not required to have a dollar in. You're not required to fund your reserves. You're just required to put a report out that says what it is, what the life expectancy is, and what it might cost to repair it. But you're not you're not required to fund it. The 804 number back in 2014, the board said, I don't want that number to go below 400,000. So our reserve analysis knows that that's our tolerance. It doesn't get to there. If you go back to if you go to 2023, 24, 25, and 26, you'll see in 2025, we drop again, and that's because of a major road project there on that. And then after 2025, it's an uphill climb. So on your dollars, we just continuously climb upwards, and our reserve fund balances gets higher and higher each year. So if we can get through the hump in 2025, and we don't have any issues between now and 2025, our reserve study shows a favorable balance, growing each and every year thereafter. Any questions?
Randy, would you scroll up to the list of projects? Scroll down, I mean. So just for folks, just look at that for a minute, and, whatever your hot button it happens to be in the community, whether it's a golf course, whether it's streets, whether it's the tennis courts, that's where the money's going, folks. I mean, that's the projects that are all, taken care of, that people are concerned about, are being watched, pump houses, something like item 23, door refrigerator, all those kind of things. Again, there's a tennis court. All those are things that we, have to do as part. It's not any different than maintaining your house, and how you plan for your expenditures to replace your roof or your water heater or whatever it is. Dog park, wire fencing. So it's a little bit of everything for folks, depending again on what your interest is. Outdoor picnic tables.
So that tree replacement of $294,000, that goes on for a few more years after, it's 3 more years after this year within the reserve study.
Okay, I have a question. Based looking at that list, my understanding that to qualify to be in the reserve study, it needs to be of a value of $3,000 or more?
For our asset, to be on our asset level in our depreciation schedule, it's $3,000 or more. In here, when the reserve study analysis did this back in 2014, the first one, he put these in there, and we have been allowed via the auditors to leave them in there.
So we don't have a minimum in the reserve study?
We have, staff tries to push that minimum as hard as I can, so that we're, but it does, they are community assets, they are assets of the community, they are being repaired or replaced or maintained, and if they don't come out of the reserve study on one of those items, they are coming out of your operating budget in the contingency line.
Something else to remember is that our reserve study is a component-based. So some of these things are in here, and they're part of a larger system, and so this is just a part of it, a piece of it. So that's sometimes why the dollar amount is lower as well.
Your security building over there has the stairs, the component, the ceiling, or the roof, the component, the inside, the painting on the outside, the gutters. All of these are different components for that one building. It just doesn't sit there as the security building. It's all the different components that create that. So one component may be less than 3,000, but as a whole, the component is more on a general.
Okay.
And I'd like to point out too, at the top when we're looking here where it shows a percent increase, it looks like there's a significant increase from last year to this year, but part of last year's number that's not reflected in that $49 is a repayment of the loan from the reserve study to pay for the Wayne Clark settlement. So if you include that amount, this number here is closer to $60, and so the percentage increase is actually smaller. But I just, again, it looks disproportionate with a 25% increase, but that's a little bit misleading.
I was going to, is the 19 or 1.9 what we actually paid, or that's including the money that we then later used to pay back? So we really only put in like 1.2 or something that year. Yeah.
And then we have the additional payback of that case in 2020, the other half. And that is actually included in the 2.4.
Okay.
So. Any questions?
Perfect, Kim, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
So before I bring Mr. Russ up to give us his presentation, I wanted to point out one thing I neglected to mention as far as the staff report. Our golf pro, Richard Pritchard, was able to secure a junior golf tournament for our course right before the 4th of July. So the July 2nd and 3rd, there will be junior golf played here. And obviously, it's bringing in a bunch of golfers and people from around, and I believe the whole North State. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I just wanted to share that.
You have other tournaments too coming out?
We're working on other things, but I mean, I think that's, again, something that we're trying to increase play, obviously. I mean, that's how you lower that subsidy, is to get more people to use it. So it's an event that he's been trying to do, and I gave him the thumbs up, and he was able to get it done. So I think we're moving forward in that respect. So without further ado, I've got Charles Russ. So for everybody's edification, my intent is to highlight a department. Stuff goes on behind the scenes that nobody really knows about at the association, the various departments. I learn stuff every day that the security department does, for instance, that I didn't know they were qualified to do or otherwise had the ability to do. And so it gave me the idea we don't celebrate our success. We don't brag about ourselves. The only thing we ever really talk about is what we did wrong, or at least what people perceive that we've done wrong. So this is an opportunity to demonstrate, in this case, what security does for the association as a whole. So take it away, Russ.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, Board of Directors. By the way, I just want to mention, walking through those double doors is like walking into people's court.
Maybe we'll get the music playing for you.
I can hear the music, All right, so anyway, thanks, Randy. So our plan is to discuss security services. So as the Director of Public Safety and Environmental Compliance, I oversee the Department of Security Services and the Department of Environmental Control. We'll circle back on environmental control at a different time.
Yeah.
So I think we've got enough to talk about just on the security side. So we put together a presentation for you, and we hope that you enjoy it. Next slide, please. So these are the brief things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about what is our purpose, what is our organization, our mission and jurisdiction, desired end state, organizational chart, our authority, some limits on our authority. I think that's important to understand. A snapshot of our daily duties for patrol, public safety on the lighter side. Hopefully you guys will like one of those slides. Our in-service training plan, community programs for the community here, and also some stats. Our gate and patrol stats for 2018-19 to give you a little comparison. Just a little overview at our fiscal year 20 operating budget, some fun facts. Upcoming events, and also special recognition. So we do have an employee tonight that we'd like to recognize that has 30 years of experience, or more than 30 years of experience, 30 years of service to the Hidden Valley Lake community. So we want to recognize her at the very end of the presentation. So next slide. Just a brief overview of our purpose. Screen and restrict access to the community to only authorized persons, enforce policies and operating rules, protect association property and assets, assist members and law enforcement agencies in preventing criminal activity within the community, rendering assistance to members and guests in need, and also promote the safety of members and guests as they use association streets, common areas, and facilities. Next slide. Our organization. We're licensed by the state of California as a proprietary security employer, and all of our patrol officers and gate attendants are licensed by the Bureau of Security, the BSIS, Bureau of Security Investigative Services. Well, security is mandated by Article 2, Section 2 of the governing documents, specifically the CCNRs, and operationally regulated by board policy and management directives. Next slide. Our mission is to take a proactive service role in protecting the safety of persons and property within the Hidden Valley Lake through crime prevention, problem solving, policy rules enforcement, and observing and reporting incidents to the appropriate governmental entities. And our jurisdiction is the geographic boundaries of Hidden Valley Lake. Next slide. Our desired end state. By the way, it says there's a cat stuck in this tree. I'll be right over. Anyway, our desired end state is to cultivate a true sense of community, to preserve collective rights and interests of homeowners and safeguard property values and member quality of life. That's what we're trying to achieve. The progress, the steps to get there, we're going to talk about. Next slide. It's a brief overview of our organizational chart. You see the board of directors at the very top. And the general manager, I report to the general manager. We have an administrative assistant, Kelly, provides operational support to our security services coordinator and also our environmental lead control coordinator. We also have patrol sergeants, patrol officers, and gate attendants. So on the left, you'll see we have our authorized numbers for full-time. We have 7 full-time gate attendants that we're funded for. We have 7 full-time patrol officers, and 2 of those patrol officers are actual patrol sergeants. So we classify them as shift supervisors. We also have an administrative assistant. So, and we also are funded for part-time. The additional part-time hours is 3,120 hours per year for patrol and 2,960 hours per year for our gate attendants. So we're a 24/7, 365 operation. In terms of total budgeted hours for just patrol, 17,680 hours is what's budgeted. Gate operations, 17,520 hours. And administration is 6,240 hours that we're funded to provide services for Hidden Valley Lake. Next slide. This slide provides a general overview of our authority. These are the bodies of law, policies, and management directives that guide us. We do mention California Penal Code Section 834 and continuing past that, 837, regarding private person arrests. And I would like to mention that even though we have a hands-off policy, what happens is if a crime is committed and a peace officer doesn't actually witness the crime, but we do, we would be the ones who actually make the arrest. Even though we're not actually physically arresting somebody, but the way the law works is that if a peace officer arrives but they didn't witness it, but our staff did, they would ask us, do we want to place them under private person's arrest? We say yes, that's why that section is included. Business and Professions Code having to deal with Proprietary Security Services Act. California Civil Code Section 4000, etc. We all know that one. Association governing documents. Also the policies adopted by the board of directors. These also give us guidance. The association rules enforcement policy, community access policies, rules and fine schedule, association IDR policy and administrative procedures, as well as the HVLA, South Lake County Fire Protection District Auto Aid and Response MOU. I'd like to comment just briefly on that. So we have executed that agreement, that mutual aid agreement with South Lake County that's managed by CAL FIRE. And what that does, folks, is it allows us to, with that MOU, we auto respond to 911 emergencies. We will initiate initial scene management, assess the situation, provide patient care and treatment commensurate with our level of training, but not to exceed that. Once the public agencies arrive on scene, we take a back seat. So we then operate in a support role. If they don't need us anymore, then we go about our daily duties, other responsibilities that we have. And then internal procedures, which we would consider management directives, our department general orders, operating directives, and standing operating guidelines. Next slide. Limits of authority. Our security personnel are not peace officers or public officers. It's very important for everyone to know that. Employees do not possess the authority to enforce state, county, or local codes and ordinances. This is also important to recognize, because many times members will call up and they don't understand why we're not enforcing a particular county code or a state regulation. If it falls outside of our scope of the rules, that those bodies of law that dictate what we do and don't do, what's important is at least we help the member get to the proper agency. If it's a public agency, so they can assist them. Employees are not trained or authorized to conduct field sobriety tests or breathalyzers on persons under reasonable suspicion of impairment. Employees are not authorized to carry firearms or batons while on duty pursuant to current BSIS licensing restrictions. So again, we're proprietary, we're in-house security, and based on our license, we're restricted on being able to carry firearms or batons. Not saying that that's what we're requesting, just saying that's currently what our restriction is. As agents of the owner, employees are only authorized to exercise their authority while on duty, on official business, and within HVLA's jurisdiction. Okay? Snapshot of daily duties. I know I'm reading all these slides one at a time, and I think you guys have already got a copy of this, so I'll just highlight some of these. We eat and break when we can. We're a services first operation. The daily duties that are highlighted here give you kind of an idea, a snapshot of what we do. What this doesn't say are the exceptional calls, the extra things that our staff do on a daily basis, such as Sergeant Drago walking in with the fire extinguisher and putting out a fire in a house, or one of our patrol officers being flagged down because there was a horse in distress at the stables, and because of his background and experience, he was able to provide assistance to that. Or a resident flagging down a patrol officer because a branch fell on their driveway and they needed help moving that branch. So our patrol officer jumps out and helps the resident move that branch. There's a lot of things more than just the daily snapshot, other than enforcing the rules, responding to medical emergencies.
And if I could interrupt real briefly, another example is one of our staff provided grief counseling, if you will, I guess would be a good way to put it. One of the roommate passed away, and the guy was distraught that he didn't do more to help save him, and our officer was able to provide that support, emotional support to that individual. And to add too, I did talk with, when we had that meeting earlier with all the folks with light bars on their trucks and cars earlier today, we received several compliments from licensed state law enforcement officers about how well trained our staff is, how much they appreciate their assistance. So I just thought I'd throw that out there too.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay.
Next.
Next slide. All right, this was public safety on the lighter side. So I ain't going back to daycare. It's the cops flush all the catnip, and he's got no backup for it. So these are not actual incidents that happened in Valley Lake. This is just, but we've had, over the years, we've had some really funny and interesting things that have happened, such as the pot-bellied pig named Ralph that got loose and had a red bandana, and we were on the hunt and searching for Ralph. We've had some interesting calls over the years, but the previous slide, and I didn't talk about that, our standard is to respond within 15 minutes. 15 minutes or less. That's our standard. Okay, next slide. We have an in-service training plan. So there's an outline of what we do each year. So we have some sort of training every single month. So patrol officers meet at certain times of the year, once a quarter. The gate attendants meet once a quarter, and then once a quarter we get the entire staff together, and that gives me an opportunity to go over performance expectations, to talk about the vision, where we're going. We usually invite guest speakers, invite the general manager to come in and talk about big picture issues. What's important, communication is key. We've got to keep our folks in the know, keep them briefed on what's going on, and then ultimately, and one of the most important things is to get feedback. To have that full circle, that feedback, listen, because these guys are the ones that are the boots on the ground that are actually executing the good idea fairies, these ideas we want them to do. but they're the ones executing it, and they're the ones that are coming back and saying, well, Russ, good idea, but it's not working. And so we may need to make some adjustments. Target Solutions is an online application that we have, so some of our training we can do online. Advanced Security Institute, they're a licensed training facility by the state of California, and they actually come on site each year, and they give briefing on legal aspects and liability prevention, self-defense, and that also, as well as Target Solutions, applies towards their continuing education units that they're required as a condition of their license by the state. Post-reserve level 3 training, that's one of the standards. We expect our patrol officers to attend that training. That's a 40-hour course. CPR, AED, first aid, and first responder training, and also cross-training with South Lake County. And that's one of the things with the memorandum of understanding that we have with the district, is having that cross-training so that we can interface seamlessly. We respond to a call, the public agencies respond, they know what we're doing. We go to provide support, they ask for something that they need help with, we know exactly what they want and what they need and where to get it. Okay, that's just a little overview. Think about who you're sharing the road with. And by the way, that patrol officer, it's kind of hard to see her, that's Margaret. Margaret, are you here?
Hi.
There she is. She's the patrol officer up there. Okay, next slide. There's Sergeant Drago. So that's our community programs. That was the giving tree. And Dave, so our patrol officers delivered gifts to folks, kind of like a secret admirer. So you decided to give somebody a gift, and our patrol officers delivered those gifts. And Dave was the recipient in this particular case, and we got a snapshot of Sergeant Drago delivering it. I think it made his day. He was definitely smiling there. Other community programs, Operation Speeder, Operation Pumpkin, that's what we put on the full court press on Halloween night. Our ride-along program, that gives, if you'd like to go on a ride-along with one of our patrol staff and get a better idea of what we do, we have that program. Vacation and house check program, so if you plan to be gone for a week or two and you'd like just to put an extra patrol eyes on the house, provide some information to us. If you have a vehicle in the driveway and anything that's abnormal, maybe lights on a timer, something like that, and something that's abnormal, you provide us your contact number, we'll give you a call. Sandbag program, obviously we're in the wintertime, and so we help provide assistance, and so does the maintenance department. I don't think that's here tonight. But these guys do a good job of, in specific situations, if we've got a resident that's in need that can't come down and actually secure the sand or the sandbag, we'll deliver it for them. And our patrol officers will do the same and help. Obviously, parking, traffic, pedestrian control at concerts and special events. So the concert series at the Greenview has been a wonderful venue. It's been a lot of fun for our residents, and we're glad to be there to help participate, to provide safety and security if needed. New programs, welfare check program. So if you are elderly, single, living alone, handicapped, with disability, and you just want to call once a week. You want us to come by once a week, just to check on you and see if you're doing okay. We'll do that. So I'll put out some more information about the implementation of that program. And also Citizens Academy. This is one of, had some discussions with Randy about this program, and we're going to develop it to give residents an opportunity to come in and really kind of expand what we're talking about today into more of a full program, to get more into the nitty-gritty, and we'll send people out on the ride-alongs and maybe do some interactions with public agencies. So really, it's an education program to build your understanding, your knowledge of the public safety services that are provided for Hidden Valley Lake. 2018 and 19 gate entry statistics. You can see that we are just shy of 2 million entries last year. And then by location, you can see just visitor lane and barcode lane traffic. So last year, we screened through just the visitor lane, through the visitor lanes at Hidden Valley Lake, over 300,000 vehicles. We had 1,677,000 barcode reads, so that's where we come up with the number. You can look at the daily averages. So right now, our daily average is about 5,500 vehicles per day that come through our gates. Now, even though members use the barcode lane, our gate attendants still have to monitor that. So they're not fully exempt from ignoring it, especially if we've got having to toggle traffic. So barcode lane generally should get precedence, right? And if we've got vehicles stacked up in the visitor's lane, that gate attendant's got to monitor that. And sometimes we do have misreads. Sometimes we have barcodes that got shut off. And that gate attendant needs to pay attention to that. And our patrol staff that are up there as well. So there's a lot going on at our gates, a lot of traffic. And we don't have a lot of stacking room in some of our intersections. So it creates some challenges. But those are the numbers. And one thing I just want to comment on, you see the difference between 2018 and 19, it's about a 200,000 difference. The main reason for that is that in 2018, we did not have a preventative maintenance checks and services plan in place where we bring a vendor on site at least 3 or 4 times a year just to do preventative maintenance. And we had some mechanical problems, performance problems with our apparatus, our equipment. And so, especially our scanners. So we had a lot of double reads, and that's why the numbers are different. So the numbers for 2019 are solid, more accurate numbers. Okay? Next slide. 2018 and 19 patrol services. So the figure on your left has to do with emergency and non-emergency incidents. So you can see in 2019, we had a 24% increase in calls for service. Definitely an increase in general calls for service. Okay. The next figure, rules enforcement and total case reports. You can see the subtotal there. We had a 56% increase in rules enforcement last year compared to 2018. And total case reports, an increase of 38% compared to 2018. Of significance, use of streets, which we're talking about speeding, stop signs, we increased 236%. And I can tell you that as of the first 3 weeks of this month, we have surpassed the 2018 numbers already. I like to mention that because we are fully staffed. We have met with the staff and provided the director's intent and guidance brief, so we have very specific standards in terms of performance. We've got a really, really good group of folks, and a good chunk of our folks also live here in the community. So they have a vested interest in the outcome. But they are doing an outstanding job right now. But you can see that from 18 and 19, we actually improved. Okay, next slide. Here's just a brief overview of our operating budget for this year. So direct compensation, payroll costs, and benefits, those account for between 80 to 90% of the overall budget. You can see that the other expenses for patrol and admin is larger than the gate operations because of supply costs, other related expenses that are put into Department 20 instead of 25. And that is our revenue number for 2020 for this year for rules enforcement. Next slide.
I just want to mention real briefly too, our goal is not, this is the Lord, no, just kidding. Our goal is not to generate revenue, it's to gain compliance. So, you know, our numbers, based on just a quote that Charles just gave you a minute ago, that we've already exceeded the 2018 numbers in traffic stops. Our numbers will probably exceed this revenue, but that's certainly not our goal. We want compliance. We want people to follow the rules. Ideally, that revenue number would be 0, but that's not real. I didn't do it.
Okay, fun facts. Number one, you don't speed in Dubai, you just don't. And I would like to mention that we will not be presenting a request to get one of these vehicles. They will be fun to drive, but we're not requesting. 1994, the gate system was in disrepair. One security guard on duty most of the time. The old main gate was staffed 16 hours a day and that's it. All the other gates were wide open. And the security dispatch number, which is still the same number today, 987-3515, that's if anybody, if you need security patrol assistance, that's the number you call. That number was transferred to a big block cell phone that sat in the patrol truck seat. So we only had one person on for the entire community. Present day, HVLA's crime rate is 1/3 of the crime rate of Lakeport on average, despite HVLA having the largest population. Despite, that's correct. Patrol vehicle mileage each year is equivalent to completing 2.5 to 3 laps around the earth. So just for anybody who wants to do the math, okay, the circumference of the earth around the equator is just shy of 25,000 miles. Okay, so we put a lot of miles on our vehicles. 32 miles of roads. We're running 24/7. We're these vehicles and their shared use. So they're constantly running. Last year, patrol personnel completed over 49,000 facility checks. That's an average of 134 checks per day on average. So with our program and our iPads that we have in our patrol vehicles, every time that they make a check of a facility, they log that. And we keep account. We have accountability. Lastly, the decibel level of the new siren at Station 6-3 when activated is equivalent to the decibel level of a commercial jet at a tarmac. True statement, about 130 decibels. So not taken off, but just in general on a tarmac. So they're loud. That's the full 240 AC siren. It's a big siren when it goes off. And its rough radius is approximately 5,000 feet.
Her name is Big Bertha.
Big Bertha?
That's her name.
She talks. Upcoming projects. So following the Grove fire, one of the things we ran into, we talked about on the brief, is the fact that when we activate our sirens, the way the system was set up is when we hit the DTMF codes from our radio frequency, it sets all the sirens off. And so what we've done is we're in the process, we've got the decoders now in hand. We're going to be installing those and working with our radio vendor to reprogram our radios. Now we'll be able to, in isolation, activate only one siren instead of all of them. If in fact that's what the incident commander has asked us to do.
I was going to say, otherwise somebody's got to stand at the bottom of the siren and push the button.
Yeah.
And test that 130 decibels.
Nothing to do with Hidden Valley, that was previous military stuff. But anyway, yeah, that thing's loud, let me tell you. IDR policy revision is another project without getting into too much detail on that. Audio video surveillance camera policy. This is just more or less to memorialize what we're already doing, and we've already received the okay. It's just memorializing it. Security dispatch software implementation. So this works with our Officer Pulse program. It's a CMS, community management software through ADDI. That's our primary database where we store all the resident information, all the barcode information. The dispatch software will be able to, when we receive a call, be able to push out calls over right to the iPad. So that call will show up, it'll say to go to this location, this is the type of call it is, who to make contact with, does the RP request contact or not, all the information we need that goes right to the iPad that the patrol officer uses. Once they get there, they arrive, it automatically shows what their arrival time is, they document what happens at that particular call, then they push submit, and now we've got a full report which includes comments and information that our security dispatcher at Northgate receives. in the process of updating our general orders and operating directives. Reserve fund projects, as Kim had mentioned, such as replacement of vehicle and accessories, 2 buried gate operators, and the ABDI CMS server. That's on the docket this year. Talk about the Citizens Academy and obviously 2020 weed and fuel abatement program. That's obviously a monster program. Very, very important program. Next slide. Your security services team. So I'd like to mention Chris was recently promoted to Patrol Officer 2, given his experience, or given his service and his training requirements and his performance. It's Chris, and he's been with us for 4 years. If you take a look at the years of service, we have some folks that have been here for quite a while. We've got some new folks. I know Matt, are you here? Did Matt go on a call? Is he around?
Oh, he's here.
Okay, this guy's 6'9". That's Matt. You gotta recognize Matt being 6'9". And then other folks that are here. I don't know if anybody else is here on that list, except for this guy, Ron. There, Ron's here. There you go.
David's here.
And well, I'm getting to Dave. So
Dave's not
we've
here.
got, you can see we've got folks that have been here for a while, and then all of a sudden we got, where's Moondog? Moondog.
He's at the gate.
There he is. So Ed's he and his wife have lived in the community. Their folks lived in the community for a long time. So he just reached his 14-year mark. David Weaver, 22 years. Ruby, are you here? Sergeant McMullen, right there. She's at 21 years. And Tom Strickland, who's a security services coordinator. Did you wave so everybody knows? There it is.
That's Ruby, not Tom.
And Tom Strickland, our security services coordinator, just reached his 20-year mark. And then Mary Kay, 30 years. Next slide. Special recognition, I'm not quite done yet. Thanks for your patience. I know, yes. Well, I'm going to bring her up. And I promised her I wouldn't have her say anything, so. Special recognition, first of all, I'd like to thank the board. Thank you. I'd like to thank the general manager for your support and your guidance. I did not have on this slide the covenants committee. Sherry as the chair, Ken, I don't know if anybody else I see here on there. But you've been a voice of reason. So thank you for what you do. Also, to our Safety and Security Committee, Lee, I know you're here, our chairperson, Larry, Michael, Luis, Linda, Ken, again, and Sue, for being the liaison. Thank you for all of your service, for all that you do. And last but not least, Mary Kay. Mary Kay. Started in 1989 when she was 13. She hadn't been 13 and worked here for 30 years. Anyway, I just want to say real quick, just a couple brief things about Mary Kay. So, what's amazing to me, Mary Kay, is that you lasted here for 30 years and never met the standard. Ever. It's because she always exceeded it. Person at the gate would have a bad day and would be pretty upset. She's the one who had the smile on her face. When I told her to be on time, she showed up early. When I asked her to train a new employee to work at the gate to set that standard, those people came out exceeding the standard. When her and her husband's house burned down during the Valley Fire, they didn't leave. They stayed. I wouldn't blame them if they had, because a lot of folks left. But she chose to stay. She started in 1880. That's how long I've been here. She started in 1989, and she started out working at the restaurant. 1989. She started out as a server, worked her way up, became the assistant manager, and ended up then transitioning over to security, and she's been there ever since. And she happens to work, I would say, probably the toughest shift of any shift that we have, and that's working at Southgate during commute time when everybody's coming home on swing shift, when that gate accounts for over 60% of all the traffic coming into the community. So, and that's been her baby and her responsibility. And she's just been amazing at it. I can't say enough. So it's with great pleasure and my honor to recognize Mary Kay for her 30 years of experience. And I don't know how much longer we have you, but I hope you're welcome as long as you want. So thank you. I told her it was really hard to stuff this bicycle in here. So what we have is a crystal. It says Mary Kay for 30 years of outstanding and dedicated service. Sure you don't want to say anything?
Speech.
Go with the flow.
Yes, I like it.
That completes my presentation.
Thank you.
Very thorough. Any questions, any of the directors? No?
I'd like to make it, I just wanted to touch on one thing that Russ had said about ride-alongs. The officers take a lot of pride in it, and it's not utilized hardly at all. And so I really encourage everyone to go to the office and fill out the form to do a ride-along. I think it's still very important. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
I just like to add a really quick thing. I have been the recipient of some wonderful security officers that have helped me out, and they're so professional. It was amazing. I've even wrote a letter. I just didn't know how much they did, and I think a lot of people don't know how much they contribute to the
Hopefully this gives
community.
you a little bit of a snapshot.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to encompass everything that they do, the little things, the fit and finish things that we try to focus on in the community, but we appreciate your feedback. That's actually really helpful to the staff. Okay?
I'd like to add real brief, Charles neglected to put his years of service on there.
Yeah.
And I think we all remember just recently it was 25 years.
He said 18.
25 years, it's 110 in dog years, by the way.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll continue on with our regular agenda. Give them a second here. The next item is a consent agenda, and we have the regular board meeting minutes of January 9th. Anyone like to make a motion?
I motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, a second?
I second that.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the regular board meetings on January 9th. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Next item is committee and liaison reports. We have in our packets the Golf and Green Committee minutes of December 4th, the EC minutes of December 6th and January 3rd, and the EC's committee's 2019 yearly report of their activities. So that's for each of the directors to review. Any of the directors want to say anything about their committee liaison assignments? I guess at this time, I'll start. The Commons Committee took a 2-month liaison, or 2-month layoff, I guess it would be, for November and December. We are having a meeting for January. It's next Tuesday. I'll be in this room Tuesday evening. So right now, we only have 2 members, so we're hoping that we can get some new people that are interested and build that committee back up and get it going. So if you have any interest, next Tuesday night here. So I also heard the Golf and Green is on a little bit of a layoff.
They're on a layoff. They need.
When are they coming back?
I think
April Fools. April Fool's Day.
Yeah, they're coming back.
Appropriate, right?
They're gone till April. They need some members.
Okay. Anybody else have anything about their committees they want to share?
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
CERT is coming to Hidden Valley, and so stay tuned, please. We haven't confirmed dates yet. We are all taking classes right now so that we can get a training course. So we'll be having its certified emergency response team. So stay tuned for that, but we encourage all of you to inquire about it when we start posting it.
So CERT is Certified Emergency Response Team, not being certifiable or something like that, okay? Next on the agenda, committee appointments. We have no new committee appointments today. The old business, Building Oversight and Advisory Committee, we didn't have any more candidates, so we're going to skip over that. Takes us to new business. We have a couple contracts to consider. First one is the Aquatic Vegetation Management Services.
Right, so this is basically updating and renewing the contract with Clean Lakes. We budgeted $50,000, so we're asking the board to approve a contract of not to exceed $50,000 for 2 treatments for the year. And, we'll begin that treatment process as soon as the lake needs it, which would be sometime in the spring.
Okay. Any director want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2020 Aquatic Vegetation Management Services contract.
And I
Not to
said,
exceed $50,000.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? Anybody have comments, Steve, Melanie? Anyone? And this is a organization or a company we've used for
About 10 years, of my understanding
many,
is.
many have a good relationship with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, no other discussion. I'll call the motion. All those in favor of approving it? Okay, have a clear lake again.
Thank you, yeah.
Next item is a contract, increased contract amount for lake sediment removal.
Right, so we have an agreement with Northwest Biological to provide consultation and other services related to the dredging project. He recently brought forward a couple of invoices that were not included in the original scope of work, totaling about $11,000 and change. Conversation with him suggested there would be approximately another $10,000 that was not included in the original scope of work, which brought it to a little over $21,000. And I thought, just to make nice round numbers and hopefully you don't have to come back for an additional adjustment, to ask for an increase of 25 to make this contract now not to exceed $75,000. And it is related to the lake sediment removal project. And we're still on track. For those of you who have any interest, we're still on track to get that project going in the late summer, early fall this year.
Okay, and some of these additional, can you kind of summarize or give an example of what some of these extra duties that he's been doing?
Well, some of them have to do with, identifying yet another disposal site. I mean, we went through a whole list of them. Some of it's coordinating, providing descriptions of the project. We need to get an encroachment permit from Caltrans in order to move the sediment mechanically rather than via trucks. And we need their permission to do that, so we need his expertise and advice to help us wordsmith the permit process. Couple of things.
Okay, and then he had identified some things, but it looks like he's helping us actually do some of the tasks, like the mapping of the lake and the sediments?
Correct. He'd been involved in that. He's actually been here a few times, more than he anticipated.
Okay. Any motion?
Sure. I would love to make a motion to increase the contract amount for the lake sediment to, I'm sorry, I don't see the number here. $75,000, not to exceed.
And I second that.
And just to be clear, this is money coming out of the reserves. It's not operational money.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move the amount to $75,000. Any discussion? Nobody have comments? Nope. Okay, I think it speaks for itself. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay. Continue on our path to fall sediment removal, hopefully. Okay, our next contract, well, actually, no. This is another Item, we have a bar for the proposed changes to our election rules.
Yes, as was mentioned in the President's report, the state law changed late last year, effective January 1. There are some new rules. For instance, I mean, one of the biggest ones I think is it does not, eliminates most of the exceptions or exemptions for people to be able to vote. So in the past, you used not to have to, you couldn't vote if you were not in good standing. There are certain exceptions for that to either vote and or be a director that have been eliminated now. There's some other things. The copy that you received in your board packet on Friday was not a red line, and as for the purposes of the community here, the red line version did not actually get here until I got it literally at 3:45 this afternoon. So I would suggest, unless there's some specific questions, that we table this until the next board meeting.
Okay, no, I agree. I was thinking that maybe you could highlight a few of the changes, but I think you have. Besides their suggested changes, not having totally read this yet, besides their suggested changes, is there a wish list or an options list or something?
There's a couple of things in there that we can talk about in more detail. I have not had the opportunity to review what we actually, I mean, literally, it was 15 minutes before the executive session started, and so I was rushing to get it printed and provide to you, so I didn't look at it. And just in discussion, there's some things, term limits is eliminated in the new rules. We had term limits. There's a strong belief among the legal profession that the elimination of those exemptions also would preclude us from having a term limit. So, discretion being the better part of valor, our attorney recommended they come out. So that's out of this draft, and we will make the draft available once we publish the next agenda.
Okay, I noticed another change it looked like is that our vote by acclamation that we've...
Right, yeah, that's the state law change. It's no longer allowed. So the way we did it last year, even if we only had 3 candidates, we still have to have an election. And unless we had over 6,000 lots, which we don't.
Okay, and I guess the other, before we vote to table this, the other part of this is that when we do agree on the changes, that we'll need to have a public notice period of these changes.
Right, it's 28-day notice.
Okay, and if we were to publish it in the Views by postponing this to our next meeting, that would not delay the publishing date.
That's correct.
In the Views.
It's still going to be published in March.
By tabling to the next meeting, we're not necessarily losing any time on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we table this to our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that, since we just received it prior to the meeting?
I agree.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling? Okay. We'll look at it at our next meeting. That'll give us some time, and I would encourage, I guess, directors, as you look at this, if you have questions, can they write
Yes,
to you?
absolutely.
Or if they have additional questions? Okay. Okay, that's the election rules. The next is retaining an inspector of elections.
So again, we were served with the recall papers last meeting. We've had conversation with Curtis, with the inspector of elections, who's been our inspector for some time. He provided a proposal of $14,314 or something, slightly more than $14,000, which exceeds my signature authority. And so I need the board approval to enter into agreement so we can get this recall moving along.
Okay, any motions?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the recall proposal form, the inspectors of election.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion?
I would like to point out, too, that this is the hard cost for the inspector of election.
Not the total cost.
And not the total cost. We had conversations with the attorneys last week. We were on the phone with them for an hour and a half. Combined amount of that was approximately $1,000. They've obviously been working on drafting the new rules, which they would have had to have done anyway, but we would have had more time to do it if it had been a normal election cycle. But the estimate for attorney's costs is about $5,000. Yeah, it's staff time. I mean, minimum, we're talking $20,000 of unbudgeted expense. And for the sake of discussion, that works out to more than $7 per lot. So just be aware that these things don't come inexpensively.
Okay, any other discussion? I guess I would note that we've used the Inspector of Elections now for 2 or 3 years, I believe.
At least, yeah.
They're an independent third-party agency that's what they do is elections for HOAs. So, okay, any other comments? All those in favor? The motion, okay. Contract with Inspector of Elections is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think that takes us to the end of our agenda.
Don't forget, we have executive session
Right,
after
so
this.
yes, all directors, please stick around. We still have some work to do, but for our open session, we're to the end. Do we have any members that would like to comment before we wrap up? Yes.
My name is Christina, and I am at UBL 46204619. Commission regulations, what are they?
I didn't hear, sorry.
Commission two legal issues. What are?
2 legal issues?
Okay, you said you discussed two legal issues.
That's all we need to announce.
Yeah, no, that's by, those is confidential discussions.
Okay, and as Randy is aware, we had a meeting with him, and you all were sent a packet that we had a meeting with. You were in violation of not being compliant with SB 323 as of 1/1/2020. Attorneys have been contacted. So you're delaying this recall process for a reason. It isn't going to fly with the numbers. This doesn't. We have 368 signatures, and we have more, but we can't turn them in. So, you know, the point is here, you're doing this deliberately to stall something that you should not be doing, and it's illegal. I don't care who your attorneys are, I know who mine is.
Okay, no, thank you. I guess we'll have the attorneys figured out.
Yes, you will.
Okay, any other comments? Going once, going twice? All right, thank you all for attending. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
And directors, please stick around.